The movement was born back in 2008 during the planning for a textile workers' strike on April 6th. Ahmed Mar used Facebook and YouTube to organize a national protest.
The April 6th Facebook page said, "We call on all Egyptians to go on strike." And from then on, their page became incredibly popular.
60% of Egypt's population is under 30. Even with access to university education, many are unemployed. They seemed ready to be radicalized.
These young people in Cairo said, how can we support this? And they launched this group, which, as we know now, swelled to 70, 80,000 people in a matter of weeks. And this caught the regime by surprise.
But on April 6th, 2008, the day of the strike, Egyptian security police struck back. They killed 4 protesters and jailed 400 others. Before long, they had tracked down Ahmed Mar.
كان ضرب كله بإيديهم في دماغي وضرب على قفايا وضرب على ظهري كده.
He was beaten by the security forces.
بعد كده كان الأسئلة كلها على ناس أعضاء في جروب الفيسبوك.
He says his torturers wanted to know about a virtual friend named Fatima.
ما أعرفهاش فيس تو فيس، عضو في الجروب.
They didn't seem to understand that she wasn't a friend in real life.
He was taken in and beaten so that he could give the police the password for the Facebook group when there was no password all along. So that just shows you just how clueless the regime and its security apparatus was.
ولا احنا ممكن نعمل فيك نغتصبك ونجيب عصاية وندخلها وحاجات زي كده.
Mar gave the security police a false password. He was released.
When he is finally released and is back online, you see this feeling of new energy and new anger about the treatment of the people and about the suppression and about the regime. And so this galvanizes the movement. Maher then has more currency because now he's been tortured and he's back at it. And a lot of people I spoke with, they really describe him as the everyman hero.
It took 3 more years. Mar and April 6th slowly built a base. They had begun planning by learning from others.
They would talk about Mandela, they would talk about Serbia, and they were taking notes. And because of the internet, they were reading about these things.
They studied the Serbian student movement, Otpor, meaning resistance. Using highly disciplined, nonviolent tactics, the students had successfully toppled Slobodan Milosevic. Sergej Popovic was the leader of that revolution. He shared his experience with the April 6th group.
One of the key things is to understand that the nonviolent struggle is a form of warfare, because violence contaminates your movement and creates your opponent excuse for using police and military forces. Also, there is this big problem with media and violence. If you have a march of 100,000 people and one single idiot throwing stone, he's going to be the star of the day.
The Serbian example highlighted the fact that movements don't need to be violent, especially in Mubarak's Egypt. I mean, violence will backfire. The police are incredibly violent.
اولا دربنا في صربيا دربنا على فكره ان احنا ايه هو مفهوم العنف ازاي نقدر
Mohammed Adel had been to Serbia to learn the techniques.
ازاي ان احنا نقدر نساوي نقدر نتحكم في الناس نقدر ننظم مسيرات وفعاليات كويسه.
An extraordinary act of daring in the country of Tunisia.
The President Ben Ali has stepped down.
Then Tunisia broke, and as protesters there overthrew their government, Mar and the April 6th activists saw their chance.
This was their moment, and they saw it happen, and they jumped online, they jumped on SMS, they jumped on Twitter, and they had each other accessible, 30, 40, 50,000 people right away in this forum.
They set a date, a public holiday, January 25th, and issued a call for action.
Asma Mahfouz, a young activist with the April 6th movement, decided to film a vlog to encourage Egyptians to join protests on January the 25th, Police Day.
عايزين ننزل يوم 25 لو لسه عندنا ننزل نطالب بحقنا كبني ادمين كل واحد في البلد دي شايف نفسه راجل يبقى ينزل.
The video went viral. The morning of the 25th, Mar and April 6th waited to see if anyone would show up.
They have no idea if 3 people are going to turn up, or 300 or 3,000. They're just doing their best to be heard and to be convincing in cyberspace. And so they really don't know what's going to happen, what will be the turnout.
From the balcony of the April 6th office, they saw it begin. In Egypt, this holiday is called Police Day.
اصلا كان يوم 25 احنا بنعمله كل سنه، بيعملوا 25 يناير بيعملوا كل سنه حاجه ساخره من الشرطه. عملنا بيان وزعناه في الشارع ان ده ازاي يحتفلوا بالبلطجيه والحراميه واللي بيساعدوا على التزوير والكلام ده كله. ولكن ما حدث في تونس غير المسار بالكامل.
I heard about April 6th from Facebook. I'm not into politics. I wanted to do something for my country, something positive. That's the happiest day in my life.
Then the security police. They try the non-violent tactics imported from Serbia. They hold their hands up in compliance. They salute and even hug the police. On this day, it seems to work. They move toward Tahrir Square.
The uprising started with these protests on January the 25th, but then it reached everyone else. It became much bigger than just social media and the invitation on social media. It became something that galvanized all Egyptians.
At April 6th headquarters, producer Elizabeth Jones began capturing the first days of what they were starting to call the revolution. Mar is already coordinating the next big protest.
نستمر في ضغوطنا المستمره من اجل ان احنا نحصل تغيير حقيقي، مش مجرد وعود زي كل وعود. لازم يحصل تغيير حقيقي. الناس مش تخرج من الشارع غير لما يحصل تغيير حقيقي في مصر.
A lot of it is really about this innovation. Every night they think about, what can we do next? What can we call an event? The tweet that went around the world, or the million-person march, or the Day of Rage. They're innovating. They're creating.
By now, tens of thousands have joined the protests. Clashes have begun with the security police. There have been arrests, including April 6th spokesman Mohammed Adel.
مجرد ان الامن شافني في العربيه، نزلني من العربيه ونزل فيا طحن. الامن نازل فيا بيطحني بالبوكس وبالعصيان. كان في اسماعيل الشغال مدير امن القاهره نزل فيا ضرب. قال لي خدوه على العربيه. غير كده كمان اضافي الضباط في الشارع كله ظابط يشوفني عملتوا ثوره بقيتوا زي تونس خلي الفيسبوك ينفعكم.
Mar tries to handle organizing for as many as 100,000 Egyptians who could hit the streets the next day.
يوم اتوقع انه اكبر بكتير من يوم ال 25 لان الحشد كبير جدا على الانترنت وعلى الرسائل وحتى الناس في الشارع بتتكلم بصوره كبيره، وهيبقى خروج من مساجد كتير في القاهره وفي المحافظات، هيبقى العدد كبير يعني في مناطق شعبيه ويتجمعوا برضه على التحرير، بس اتوقع ان يكون عدد اكبر بكتير من يوم الثلاث.
In the morning, their plan is to walk from the mosques through the square directly to the presidential palace. At dawn, the police move into the city. At April 6th headquarters, because of the previous day's violence, they decide to name this march the Day of Rage. Then the government retaliated. Mobile phones and the internet, the key organizational tools, were taken down.
When Mubarak shut off the internet, it really revealed the desperation on the part of the regime about what was happening and about how effectively the protesters were using the tools of social media.
But even without the internet, the organizers continued to work.
They're not just online activists. They have boots on the ground. They have connections to other, experienced activists.
They'd learned from the Serbian students and the Tunisians. Wearing homemade armor, they are prepared for another day in the streets.
I think it's a nice combination of people who know how to use the internet and are web savvy and also have real experience with street protests and trying to organize them.
جمع الناس في مسيرات سلمية هتتجه لميدان التحرير من كذا منطقة، حوالي 4 مناطق بس من المناطق الشعبية جدا، من الطبقة اللي هي فقيرة جدا من الناس، عشان هي دي الطبقة اللي حاسة بالمشاكل الاقتصادية اللي احنا أصبحنا فيها دلوقتي.
Their nonviolent tactics are tested immediately.
Day of demonstrations and the largest ever seen.
The protests began after midday prayers, which happened on Fridays.
Violent protests have been spreading. That curfew in place we've seen
provoked by deliberate violence from the police.
The air is thick with black smoke and tear gas causing us a
protest movement. They're calling this an open revolt to spread on social networking sites like
Cairo is in lockdown.
They are beating people in the streets. يعني نطلع فوق. تعال فوق.
They are prevented by police from getting to Tahrir Square. They are forced up the side roads. The police in hot pursuit. It becomes a standoff. But more protesters arrive. The police can't guard every access route. Then, everything stops for prayers. The police turn their backs, a gesture of respect. But once prayers are over, the pushing and shoving picks back up. And then they break through to Tahrir Square. Cairo seems like a war zone. April 6th headquarters becomes a makeshift clinic.
التحرير مدين للأمن علقة سخنة جدا. قال لك زادوا عن 20,000 كمان في التحرير.
In the beginning, it is only burned eyes and smoke inhalation.
مش تجمعات، اتنينات كده مع بعض. بس لو احنا رايحين التحرير بقى الناس حضراتكم جهزوا لنا حاجات زي كده. خلي بقى بصوا وشوفوا اللي انتوا عندكم ايه، الدنيا تحت بيطلقوا حاجات غريبة. هم مبهدلين الشباب، هم ضرب مباشر في جسم الشباب.
انتفاضة شعب من السوق ماشي، أطفال صغيرين ما بين 9 لغاية الناس عندهم 50 سنة نازلين يقولوا يسقط النظام ويسقط حسني مبارك، بس هي غير منظمة وضاربين عليهم رصاص وبيرد عليهم.
Soon, it resembles an emergency room. Without mobile phones or the internet, they rely on rumors.
لسه في مفيش كنيسه اللي بيقولوا بيحموا الكنايس مفيش كنيسه
ايوه قاصد ايوه غلط محدش قاصد بس المكان مفتوح محدش داخل
الحزب الوطني
الحزب الوطني
لا الحزب الوطني
جوه
السيده زينب الاسم
مفيش حاجه
الاسم ده مش
الكوبري يقع اسم البابا يولع
and his followers they are being beaten in Giza Square and some news about 4,000 soldiers from the army are in the streets.
In the square, the crowds are growing and the tension is mounting. Back at the April 6th headquarters, they need to know what's going on. So someone buys a satellite dish and TV. That night, they watch the national headquarters of the ruling party burn. And then a pivotal moment. The army is now on the streets. The police have been completely withdrawn. The protesters are delighted. They're counting on the army to be on their side.
لازم نعمل ايه لازم نبقى مع الجيش يعني انت عشان لو سبته الشعب مع الجيش خلاص عشان الناس ما تخافش ارجع لورا وصور كل واحد
They head out into the night, determined to protect Tahrir Square and the safety of protesters sleeping there. And now they have gained the support of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's been less than a week since the first protests in the square. Despite the violence, hundreds of thousands came as the world watched. The people continued to clamor for change. Ahmed Mar wants to make sure April 6th plays a role in that change. They hold a press conference. A reporter asks how long they intend to keep protesters in the square.
المظاهرين يفضلوا موجودين في ميدان التحرير لحد ما يتم تشكيل حكومه انقاذ وطني ملهاش اي علاقه بالسلطه الموجوده دلوقتي. المظاهرين لو مشوا من ميدان التحرير هيكون مخرج كبير جدا للنظام او لمبارك ان هو يعيد فرض سيطرته تاني.
Mar confirms that there will have to be some sort of alliance with the army.
بعض الضباط جوه الجيش ده كان يوم السبت اللي فات وعرضوا ان هم ممكن يساندونا ولكن القوى السياسيه عملت صلات سريعه ببدعي وايمن نور ومعظم الشخصيات السياسيه ولكن فضلوا ان هو يكون الحديث مع القياده المركزيه للجيش مش مع احد الفروع في الجيش يعني.
انني اتوجه بحديث اليوم.
They watch as President Mubarak finally addresses the nation on state television.
إنني لم أكن يوما طالب سلطة أو جاه.
He was unwilling to relinquish power. The reaction is to take to the streets.
واثنين دكتوراه في ان احنا هنفضل في ميدان التحرير لغايه لما يمشي. مش هنمشي مش هنمشي هو هيمشي
Not long after that, military police raided the April 6 headquarters. Pictures appeared on the internet of the trashed offices. Producer Elizabeth Jones was briefly detained, and the 15 activists who were there at the time were arrested and taken away. In the days that followed, we lost track of Ahmed Mar. He and April 6 were in the thick of it with the crowd. After 18 days, President Hosni Mubarak resigned. During the cleanup, we found Ahmed Mar surrounded by reporters.
I mean, what are the achievements and what more needs to be done now?
أهم حاجة إن الشعب صحي، دي أهم نقطة. لو كانت حصل تغيير نخبوي والشعب لسه نايم ما كانش يبقى تغيير، لكن الشعب صحي وعرف حقه وعرف ازاي يطالب بحقه وعرف قوته. الشعب أقوى من الأمن المركزي.
In the days that followed, new protests spread through the Middle East. In Yemen, Bahrain, in Jordan, Iraq, in Iran, and Libya.
Already, the activists in Egypt are reaching out to friends and peers in neighboring countries. The fact that the people have finally put their foot down and said, enough is enough. In Egypt, of all places over there, supposedly stable Egypt. This is a huge message for US policy and for residents of other parts of the region.